Welcome to On the Issues. I'm Irma Lauder, Chair of the Board of Selectmen in Hingham. And today we'll talk about the issues facing the town and town meeting as it's coming up. And my guests today are Bill Reardon, Chair of the Harbor Development Committee, and Alan Peralt, Chair of the Trustees of the Bathing Beach. And we'll be talking about the harbor and the articles that are going to be on town meeting floor that affect the harbor. So first, let's take a look at some of the issues that we're facing as a town. Everybody's always curious about Aquarian, the litigation. The trial is finished. Closing arguments will be on May 28th, and then we're very hopeful as a town that we'll have a decision by early summer. This has been a very challenging year budget-wise, and so far for snow and ice and roof clearing, we've spent about $1.8 million, which will give us some budget pressures as we go along. Up until this year, the most we've ever spent is very close to $1 million in the fiscal year 2009. So we're just about to double it. On average, if you take any 5 years over a 10-year span, 15-year span, we spend about $550,000 a year on snow and ice removal. So this year has been a stretch. So Mother Nature has certainly been an overachiever. The budgets are now close to final. We have strived as a Board of Selectmen for fair and balanced budget, but also looking for the sustainability as we go forward for the next 5 to 10 years. And there will be some growth pressures in the next several years. The warrant is almost done. It needs to be finalized by Monday. So we will have at least 2 warrant articles in the supplement. Snow and ice and the storms have really thrown a monkey wrench into everyone's schedules. And I want to thank all of the committees and the advisory committee who have throughout it all been very professional, and we're all working to closing the warrant. We've had several warrant articles withdrawn over the last week, most notably the one involving plastic bags and certain paper bags. The group sponsoring it will be back next year after they do a full socialization of the issues and reach out to members of the community and especially all of our merchants. And we have a number of articles that this year are going to involve significant spending, including a proposed acquisition, and we'll be talking about that today. We also want to make sure and invite everyone to come to town meeting. This is an important year, as they all are, but it's very important this year with the high snow and ice costs and the number of spending articles. We're so lucky we have one of the last primitively scenic harbors that has not been overdeveloped. And frankly, it's much thanks to these 2 gentlemen and their committees. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you both, and if you'll walk us through some of this, and then we'll talk with the audience.
Sure. The first thing I'll hold up, Irma, is a visual, if they can get it in, that actually shows the harbor basically from on the left is the bathing beach area, and to the extreme right is what's commonly known as Steamboat Wharf, but really should be known as Barnes 2. So essentially there are, 4 or 5 main wharfs along there, most of which are constructed of granite, including our town pier. Some of the articles we're dealing with, and I'll get more specifically into on my behalf on the, as far as a trustee, is preservation of the parking lot and the bathing beach and doing a beach management plan, which, God willing, will get us the engineering and the funding for a new and improved boat ramp. Bill, who is the chairman of the Harbor Development, will then pick up and talk about the seawalls, which we've been talking about for some time. So I'll first show you some issues. Obviously, we had a tough winter, fall-winter of 2013. This was the year we had Hurricane Sandy. We had essentially a nor'easter and then Hurricane Sandy, which essentially undermined our parking lot, eroded much of the sand that was there, and did a significant job on a very small stone revetment we had there. that we've been talking about years of beefing up, because to its left was a larger armor stone wall, which used to hold up pretty well. Even though we're a harbor, we do have a fairly long fetch across Hingham Harbor that can hit the beach particularly hard. And that's one thing we've been trying to deal with over the past couple of years. As recently as this past fall, we also had, just from storm damage, these are some damaging things of what happened without taking the asphalt away, but came pretty darn close. Step number one that we took care of this past fall, based on funds from town meeting last year, was to replace what was the small stone revetment with a much larger armor stone revetment that has taken it above the flood elevation. So now the elevation of that wall is about 16 feet, whereas the prior one was about 13. A lot of this, and Bill will speak to this, is sea level rise issues that, regardless of what their causes are real, and it's something we're having to deal with. So what we're trying to do, and this is going to be a tough image, I believe, for the camera, but we're going to be taking, this is an image of our parking lot, and what we're going to be actually doing is we're proposing to sacrifice about anywhere from 15 to 30 feet of the asphalt on the existing parking lot, create a larger resource area. But in the process of doing that, what we're going to do is create a much more gradual repose to the sand. Part of the reason those earlier pictures show that the scarping that occurs there is because it's so steep. And by cutting it back, we'll actually have a more gradual repose, kind of what I call the selectmen's part of the beach.
Yeah.
The area in front of the gazebo on the water side, many people think that's the bathing beach. It's actually just an area that is under the jurisdiction of the selectmen. There's a more gradual repose there, and that doesn't take the same beating. The other factor to keep in mind is, unless we do a beach management plan, we will not be able to get funding to fix our boat ramp, which has got exposed rebar, collects a lot of sand that we need to put back annually on our bathing beach. And the other concept of the article we have is not only cutting back the parking lot, but doing an integrated block wall back behind it that will protect the parking lot from future erosion. And the height of that wall will be comparable to the height of the wall that we just constructed for the armor stone, again, at above flood elevation, which should protect that area. So that's the main thing from the trustees, and I can let Bill speak to the walls issue.
And just to frame it, the total amount is $872,000, something on that order.
Correct.
With about $650 related to the bathing beach issue. The other part that I'll speak to is $175,000 for engineering and design work for our existing wharves. The issue here is, if you were to look at the wharves, and I'll hold up a few pictures here too. On the upper left is a picture of what is the wall behind the POW MIA portion of the harbor front. It's also the stretch where the mobile station property was acquired. To the right is a sense of what's happening behind the granite, where when you have storm damage, the fill behind the big stones gets taken out. It weakens the wall, and gradually the large granite pieces give way and fall in. And this is another portion taken from the POW MIA location. The issue is also connected to sea level rise. I have one other photo here that gives you a sense of some of the things that happen when we have very high level tides. These are two photos of the Iron Horse Park or Town Pier. It shows what happens when you have a major storm, the amount of seaweed, the amount of stones that just get thrown up, and all of this is eating away at the wall. So the thrust of this article, this portion of the article, is we've worked with town engineer Roger Fernandez to work up an estimate to have engineering site work and analysis done to quantify what's the work that needs to be done and how much would that cost. And it addresses both the deteriorating condition of the major four piers, Town Pier, POW MIA, and the mobile station, and then Barnes 1, where currently Lincoln Maritime operates, and Barnes 2, which is the vacant pier at this point. The thrust behind this really goes back to our meetings with the state legislature representatives last fall, who said, develop the vision, get to a single vision, and then be prepared to spend some money, just as we did with engineering costs for Derby Street in order to get attention at this end of town. They were urging as well that we'll need to prime the pump. And to the extent that we have done work, we've quantified what needs to be done, that puts us in a better position vis-a-vis the state to get funding from the state when and if it becomes available, whether it's the Seaport Bond Council or Garrett Bradley's, he refers to a $4 million bond bill. The other related thing that people should understand is that there is a study currently underway by the Conservation Commission. Abby Pearsall, our conservation agent, got money from the state for a seacoast resiliency assessment. The issue of sea level rise. We've sort of seen one side of that in the whole FEMA map discussion. This is a little broader than that. They will be reporting out at the end of March, early part of April. So prior to town meeting, we'll have a very good opportunity to kind of see their results. What they're going to be showing us is what the condition of the harbor might be in 2030 and 2070. And that may call for some of these very same wharves, which protect the town and Route 3A and Station Street and our sewage pumping facility and other infrastructure, so that the point of this engineering work would be also to address, using the results from the sea level rise study, is it necessary for us to think about raising the level of each of these wharfs, perhaps one granite block or two? So that's the thrust behind this major article, jointly sponsored by the Bathing Beach trustees and the Harbor Development Committee.
Thank you both very much. And Alan, one point on the parking lot.
Right.
That we don't lose any parking spaces. Do you want to address that?
Exactly. The way the parking lot lays out now, people probably are most familiar with when they're down at the farmers market, but the first row of parking spaces that right now is at the very edge of the beach with no curb stops of any kind. Behind that is roughly 40 feet to almost 50 feet of space before you get to the next designated lined off space. So it just isn't very efficiently laid out currently. We have about 145, give or take, parking spaces. We'll have the same amount when it's done again. So we're, from the Conservation Commission point, it's better in the sense that we have a larger resource area, less asphalt, less impervious surface, but the same amount of parking spaces. And the other part of this plan behind the wall is to have a vegetated area and then the beginning of what may be our paver boardwalk. We've been talking since the 2000 master plan of a boardwalk, and that's integrated into the budget that Bill alluded to. So it's really the wall, the landscaping behind it, and the boardwalk in that area. And the beach will be not accessible along its breadth as it is currently. There'll be two access points. That way we can control the amount, the flood damage. It'll still be handicap accessible because we'll have something we roll out seasonally to access wheelchairs. But this is something, we've already had a preliminary meeting with Conservation. So this is something that's been really talked about for 2 or 3 years.
And I am so happy to see everything begin to come together. Because when I first became a selectman, you all had been meeting jointly with the trustees. But there was so much on the table, and it didn't seem possible that we kept pushing and pushing. But now it does seem like everything's really coming together in a nice manner. We just have to get the money. Go ahead, Bill.
I just wondered whether you also wanted to reference there are some other articles that relate to the harbor that will be on the warrant. Last evening, the advisory committee heard a citizen petition from Deirdre Anderson, a resident off Summer Street. Summer Street neighborhood group has been concerned about safety on Summer Street and the Rotary for a very long time. And they had requested, and the selectmen responded positively, and so did the advisory committee, to asking for funding, once again on the theory of if you spend engineering money, you are then better positioned, although it'll be a long-term effort here, with the Department of Transportation to address the question of the Rotary. And really the whole transportation corridor from Martin's Lane, the intersection of Martin's Lane and Summer Street, coming down to the Rotary, along the harbor, all the way to the Lobster Pound. the issue once again, and that's why these topics are all so interconnected. Any work that we might be doing in terms of sea level rise and work on the town piers, including the stone wall along the rotary itself, needs to be interconnected and make sense in the context of other articles that might be coming before us. So here's a case where these two would clearly work together. It'll be incumbent on all of the stakeholders through the newly reinstituted Harbor Task Force to make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. A lot of concern last night at the advisory committee, wanting to be sure that we weren't going to be tripping over each other.
And thank you for bringing that up. The Harbor Task Force has been reconstituted and a few extra people added to it to coordinate all of these projects and make it easier for them to move along within our own permitting process when that becomes part of it. A road audit was done probably 2 years ago now on the George Washington Boulevard, Summer Street, 3A area going up to the Lobster Pound. And it was very profound what was identified, because we'd started out from a traffic standpoint and a safety standpoint, and it became obvious the more we talked and the more information was gathered. It is primarily a safety, but if we're going to bring people down to the harbor, make it easier for them to get there, then you have to address all of the issues. And I think, Alan, you were the first to put out on the table the fact that if we don't address all these wharves and the issues, 3A will flood.
Yeah, well, we understand the town has to be proactive, but the state has a major stake in this. I mean, Route 3A is a major corridor. It's owned by the Commonwealth. And they've had issues before that they've had to deal with, at the Otis Street, right where it goes up into Crow Point by Otis Hill, there was a washout a few years ago. As Bill points out, we kind of pushed the state to make sure that the corridor was the length we're talking about, because we have pedestrian access issues. If anyone's ever walked down from Crow Point and wanted to walk down towards Barnes 2 or Steamboat, there's 2 or 3 major choke points there. I mean, coming along the harbor, coming down by Otis Street is very narrow, and cars are coming at you at a great speed, so that has to be looked at. If anyone had a baby carriage, heaven forbid, that's a tough area to go. One of the areas that was always problematic that we should be rectifying this fall with the Whitney Wharf Bridge is the signal control area right diagonally across from Stars. That was a choke point, another difficult area. Then you get up by the Rotary, and again, we have a very narrow sidewalk with people walking, young people, parking somewhere else and walking to, Lincoln Maritime Center.
There's the photo.
I mean, you have a guardrail, you have a railing that protects that. You have barely 3 feet to walk with cars coming at you going at 45 miles an hour, not thinking there's ever going to be a pedestrian there.
If you're lucky, it's 45.
Correct. So I think that whole corridor's got a lot of issues. So, and it's a transportation issue, but getting across, we value our harbor, we value our downtown. The two have a major disconnect. And I think we have to work cleverly with the state. They're going to not want too many areas that cross, but we need to have 1 or 2, if not 3, very safe pedestrian crossing areas. If it requires these people to slow down, and so be it, I think, from our perspective.
And for many of the residents, perhaps, of South Hingham who don't know where the harbor is or what goes on other than the 4th of July fireworks, I mean, the issue of access from downtown from North Street, there have been several designs over time that would make that intersection work better. Even talk at one point of a flyway pedestrian bridge may not, be in the cards.
Right.
But the point is, that's something we've known for a long time, and I know that Downtown Business Association and HDIC are very interested in making that connection. Our harbor master has been arguing for this for many years, that he wants to make Hingham Harbor, Inner Harbor, a destination. Got some wonderful restaurants and shops downtown. Let people be able to come in, moor their boat, tie up to Town Pier, and wander into the downtown.
Now we have a wonderful organization called the Friends of Hingham Harbor, started by Amy Cowan, who actually won a Butterfly Award for that.
Oh, great.
but they're very active in helping us vision the harbor. There's two other warrant articles that we can talk about, plus an RFP. There's a warrant article to grant up to a 30-year lease for Barnes 1. That's where the current Lincoln Maritime Center is. In conjunction with that warrant article, an RFP was put out in the late fall for a new Maritime Center that would service all of the town. It would be rowing and sailing and classrooms, but it requires a longer lease for the investment. It's all going to be built, if this is approved, with private funding. And I think, Alan, this is kind of what you do for a living, and I thought you
Sure.
had some really great words the other night at the selectmen's meeting.
It's been something that's been talked about for a long time, and there was a study that was done by Community Rowing 2 years ago that was done and submitted to the Harbor Development Committee when I was on that prior to being a trustee. And that study did show like a bigger vision, if you will, for that whole is a rowing and sailing center for the town of Hingham. And what they're trying to do is try to look at a bigger picture of like not just the limitations they have now, but something that would allow more year-round activity, a larger facility that allows rowing and things like that. It would continue to have general public access to the town of Hingham, which is important. And so and obviously that's integrated, as Bill said, into a lot of other things. I mean, the Rotary has great impacts on that.
Yeah.
They have a short-term vision that realizes we have to work with what we have, and the longer-term vision would be, in a perfect world, no Rotary, a regular signalized intersection, or as I've said in the past, worst comes to worst, a smaller roundabout that at least takes up less real estate. The width of that Rotary, if you scale it, is 165 feet.
Which is unheard of.
It's unheard of. The amount of green space in the middle of it is surely not a necessity, and no one's appreciating it when they're going around
Except the geese.
Other than the geese.
Other than the geese. So it's been something that's been talked about, and there's a number of people who've been active in it. As I said, Amy Cowan's been great with the Friends. DJ McKinnon funded his own money to get this thing done.
And Ken Corson, we have to give him a lot of credit.
Correct.
He's been an advocate.
And has done great getting money for the town, including get pump-out facilities down by Town Pier. And as you're pointing out on Ken's thing, what he stresses all the time, if we're going to get some state funding, there has to be almost a commercial benefit. They like to see things that not only are just for the aesthetic benefit of the town that gets them, but again, our downtown is on the other side of 3A, and the fact that Lincoln Maritime, while maybe not a commercial venture, certainly benefits a lot of people. It's not limited to just Hingham residents. It's used by 80% probably residents of Hingham, but it is not restricted. So the fact that, this is offering a fair amount of things for the waterfront, and as Bill says, getting people who don't regularly appreciate it. If eventually, we're hoping we get a snack shop down by the bathhouse. Again, just to try to get, as Amy's tried to stress, more people to appreciate the harbor than just, the people who use it for sailing or rowing or kayaking. And again, an improved boat ramp will improve the access for that. So it's part of an integrated program for the whole area.
I think there's the sense that this can and should be the year when a lot of things come together. We certainly combined Bathing Beach and Harbor Development, see the Armistone Wall that was done and completed just before Christmas. Now the Bathing Beach, which leads to the state willingness to fund the boat ramp, funding permitting as always, and then this engineering to address the wharves at the same time that coming from the other direction is the traffic issues on Summer Street. It all seems to make sense, and it does make sense for the town for the first time in a very long time to stretch a bit and make some things happen. 2007 master plan definitely needs to be updated, and that's going to be a function of the task force and all of the stakeholders again.
And that brings us to the last warrant article, which is a piece that is most interesting. As part of the master plan, going back to, I think the earliest I found a reference was the 1966 annual town meeting, where a committee was put together to evaluate purchasing properties along the harbor as they became available. In 72 and 73, the Harbor Development Committee recommended to the town that they evaluate and purchase property as it became available. So there is a consistent theme there. In '73, we did buy the land between the then Mobil station, and I can't remember the business that was there. Was it the
Dodge dealership.
Yes, thank you. Which became Whitney Wharf. And now another property has become available, and it will be the decision of town meeting, but we're very hopeful on this. 26 Summer Street is a marina, and it is the largest private piece on the harbor. Do you want to try and hold a picture up again?
Yeah, I think we can show
And
where
then
it
the Board of Selectmen has put in an offer
It's essentially the marina right
contingent
here.
upon town meeting's approval. It would give a
finger
wonderful
again.
opportunity
Right here.
in the harbor master plan for using it. Gives us a lot of extra parking in that area, and that's something we very much need. If we take the long view, and this is why the Board of Selectmen felt very strongly that this should be put in front of town meeting, that if you look 20, 30 years out, if the town owns the property and runs a marina there, the Harbor Development Committee, the task force, the trustees, and the people of the town will actually be the deciding factor on what happens there. And in a way will decide what development, if any, will take place. So we're very hopeful that that article will pass at town meeting. We're also looking at different ways of funding it. It is a serious amount of money. It's $2.9 million. And for 2 years, there's an existing lease that will allow the current person or group that runs it, that they will run it. Because we're into the boating season. Everybody that has a boat has already been paying their mooring fees and their excise taxes, and has plans for either you're going to moor your boat or you're going to buy a slip for the year. So we're in no position as a town to do anything. So 2 years would give us time to decide how it fits in the master plan, how it will allow the master plan to change, because there are great plans for bike paths and walking paths and wide boulevards along that way. So that's the one extra warrant article. So do you two have any thoughts on that?
Sure. As you mentioned, Irma, where we own the adjacent mobile site, and Bill showed some pictures of that earlier, other than acquiring it, I think we can all admit we haven't done a lot on it. I mean, it's kind of a placeholder in and of itself. But given that we have that area right adjacent to this piece, we have more flexibility than the current owners do as far as how you use it, because we have the capability of a little more parking, linking that open space with this other open space. It gives us a larger area. They just have frontage, a narrow frontage piece that goes down to 3A. We own the land that's right adjacent to it. So if you're going to do walkways or continue to the boardwalk all the way down to Barnes 2, getting better pedestrian access to Lincoln Maritime.
The other perspective is this is a parcel that we had an opportunity to buy once before.
3 times.
Well, the most recent, and we're reminded just because of the disparity in cost, was somewhere in the 1999-2000 timeframe. It was offered to the town. We didn't have community preservation funds. The figure was $610,000, roughly 20% of what we would have to pay now if we were to proceed. Taking the long view, you have to be opportunistic when these kinds of chances arise, and that's why the town needs to give good hard thought to this and what it could mean.
Well, I think we're out of time, so I can't thank the two of you enough. I love working with both of you, and I thank you for working with your teams to put this plan together to at least get us closer to a complete harbor master plan.
Great.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all for joining us, and please come to town meeting. It's your money we're spending, and we need your direction on how to do it. Join us next time. Thank you.